Good evening. This is Tuesday, June 17th, 140 days until the 2008 presidential election, proving that often a farcical argument makes the best political firestorm. Senator McCain's campaign today accused Senator Obama of being a perfect manifestation of September 10th mindset and of taking a law enforcement approach to terrorism. Our fifth story on the countdown. This comes 28 days after an FBI counterterrorism agent told the House Judiciary Committee that under President Bush, the Bureau had hired and appointed counterterrorism supervisors with little or no experience in anything but domestic crime and had a rule rotating out all counterterrorism specialists once they had reached 5 years' experience. In short, Agent Bassem Youssef had said, under a Republican administration, the FBI was, in effect, taking a law enforcement approach to terrorism. John McCain today reviving the politics of vote for the Democrat and you'll die, trying to make an issue out of Senator Obama's comments to ABC yesterday, in which the Illinois Democrat told correspondent Jake Tapper that the U.S. government is fully capable of cracking down on terrorists, quote, within the constraints of our Constitution.
It is my firm belief that we can track terrorists, we can crack down on threats against the United States, but we can do so within the constraints of our Constitution. Let's take the example of Guantanamo. What we know is that in previous terrorist attacks, for example, the first attack against the World Trade Center, we were able to arrest those responsible, put them on trial. They are currently in U.S. prisons, incapacitated.
Senator Obama adding, and this portion of the interview is not broadcast, the transcript provided by ABC News, quote, the fact that the administration has not tried to do that has created a situation where not only have we never actually put many of these folks on trial, but we have destroyed our credibility when it comes to rule of law all around the world and given a huge boost to terrorist recruitment in countries that say, look, this is how the United States treats Muslims. Former presidential candidate Rudy Giuliani, remember him, among the Republicans attacking Senator Obama for his stance. Mayor Giuliani's remarks containing, yes, a noun, a verb, and 9/11. Barack Obama appears to believe that terrorists should be treated like criminals, a belief that underscores his fundamental lack of judgment regarding our national security. In a post-9/11 world, Giuliani continues, we need to remain on offense against the terrorist threat which seeks to destroy our very way of life. That'll be $900. Except at the Bush-era FBI, as mentioned above. The official McCain attack coming in the form of a conference call during which Senator Obama was accused of having that perfect manifestation of a September 10th mindset and of not understanding the dangers posed by America's enemies.
What Senator Obama's statement reflects last night is that he's advocating a policy of delusion that ignores what happened in the failed approach of the 1990s, which allowed al-Qaeda to thrive and prosper unmolested, and that policy clearly made America less safe and more vulnerable.
This is an extremely dangerous and extremely naive approach toward terrorism.
Except when they use it at the Bush-era FBI, as mentioned above. The attackers in that conference call would be Randy Schooneman, a neocon, former advisor to Donald Rumsfeld about Iraq, also the former CIA director James Woolsey, who served as a lobbyist for Ahmed Chalabi. This afternoon, Senator Obama making clear that he will not be lectured by such Republicans on who would keep America safer.
Let's think about this. These are the same guys who helped to engineer the distraction of the war in Iraq at a time when we could have pinned down the people who actually committed 9/11. In part because of their failed strategies, we've got bin Laden still sending out audio tapes. And so I don't think they have much standing to suggest that they've learned a lot of lessons from 9/11.
Time now to turn to our own Richard Wolffe, senior White House correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Now, did Senator Obama sort of reveal the rarely spoken truth in all this, that President Bush and the Republicans failed to catch Osama bin Laden and really did not make a serious effort to do so? Is that getting sort of lost in this back and forth?
Are we talking about the same bin Laden that the president wanted dead or alive?
That one.
And the bin Laden that he would capture with the so-called Bush doctrine, which would be to treat terrorists and those who harbor them in the same way. You know, there is an interesting debate. I mean, to be fair, the administration has certainly stepped up its attacks in the Pakistani tribal areas in pursuit of the core al-Qaeda leadership. But Obama has a unique position in the sense that he can argue something that John Kerry couldn't, and a lot of Republicans and Democrats can't, which is that Iraq was a diversion, a distraction. And he opposed it from the beginning because it was just that. So he's in a very different position in terms of talking about the hunt for bin Laden. And remember when he brought up the idea of increasing the hunt, taking on the Pakistani tribal areas, he was lampooned by the Republican candidates as Dr. Strangelove. So, you know, this whole debate can leave your head spinning.
All right, so Obama says that he wants his administration to conduct itself within the law when fighting terrorism. The response then comes that he is attacked for advocating only a law enforcement approach to terrorism. Richard Clarke said today on Obama's behalf that this is the Karl Rove strategy of taking what the truth is and stating the opposite. Did we just get a preview of the rest of the general election? Does the future look awfully like the past, 2006, 2004, 2002?
Well, they're playing the same playbook, and to be fair, both campaigns are trying to get tactical advantage here by pulling quotes out of context and running with them in a way that may be more like a caricature than the real context. But what we're seeing here is something broader, which is the idea that this is 2004 again, and the Republicans can run the same arguments as if the war in Iraq has gone just fine, and bin Laden and the core al-Qaeda leadership is all locked up in Guantanamo Bay, ready for trial. Of course, there have been no trials out of Guantanamo Bay, and if there were a record to run on, this idea, this argument would be just fine. Unfortunately, as the Supreme Court and many others have pointed out, it's a deeply flawed process.
And Obama coming back the way he did, not on the Republicans' terms. Something was learned from these previous Democratic victimizations, self-victimizations of going in and playing the semantic game. He just comes out and shoots from the hip. Is that the right call?
Yeah, and he's taking some advice there from John Kerry, who told him that, but it's also his own instincts and his own record, as I just mentioned about Iraq. You know, I asked him questions on the plane today about this very issue. He is not advocating that people in Guantanamo Bay should have the full rights of U.S. citizens. He's saying they should have a modicum of due process. But more importantly, he makes the point, the Republicans are not in a position to lecture about the right way to treat these terrorists because they haven't dealt with the ones they've captured, and they haven't captured the core leadership.
And Richard, lastly, if the McCain, all the polling suggests McCain's key route to the presidency, maybe his only route to the presidency, is to separate himself from President Bush. If that's the case, why on the conference call does he have two Bush neocons speaking Bushese on his behalf?
You know, they are behaving as if they're still in the primary phase and need to lock down their base. I was speaking to someone who was very closely involved in the McCain campaign in 2000, and they're really scratching their heads here about why he's not running as an independent. That is the core McCain brand. Right now, he's running as a Bush Republican.
Richard Wolffe of MSNBC and Newsweek. As always, Richard, great thanks.
Thank you, Keith.